Nitro with the nice flow. Y'all acting like y'all don't know. Stop acting like y'all don't know.
Joe Campbell.
Who the future? We the future. Who the future? Us. Who the future? We the future. Who the future? Us. Causing chaos in the back of the bus. Get your hands up. We gon' show you how we buzz. Yeah. The future.
Ho, 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 and Happy New Year, everybody that is watching me live on YouTube and live on Twitter. It is your boy, Guns Picks, living the life, living large with fat pockets, going into the new year on this beautiful Wednesday night. Thanks for joining me. We're talking bowls here, folks. This is part 3 of the bowl breakdowns with yours truly. Shark is on holiday in FLA, so you're going to have to deal with me tonight. Hopefully the chat is going to be live with a lot of content. I see you, Muhammad, in the chat. What's up, my brother? Hey, listen, we're cooking with absolute gas. If you've been following all the picks that are on this show, you have so much Christmas money. You have more than Christmas money. You have New Year's money. We are the best, the sharpest, free YouTube show on the absolute mother planet, and hopefully you've been cashing a lot of these picks. And I'm going to give you a bonus one tonight, and I debated if I was going to give this one out. I did give it out on the Dad Bod Slack channel. If you haven't checked that out, please check that out. Muhammad in the chat says, you've been hot on these bowl games. Of course I have. I own bowls. That's what I do. I want to talk about Texas Tech and Ole Miss right now. This starts in 18 minutes. So if you're joining me early, you get the privilege of getting this pick. I'm going to go Ole Miss -3 on this one, 1.5 unit play. Now, Ole Miss coming into this game 8-4, lost 4 out of the last 5 games. 4 of those games that in those 4 games span -5 point differential, plus 84 net yard average. But look who they face. They face Texas A&M, Bama, Arkansas, and Mississippi State. 3 of those 4 teams are bowl teams. Now Texas Tech finished the season 7-5, winning their last 3 games overall. In the last 4 games, though, plus 3 point differential, minus 85 net yard average. So look at the net yard average when you look at these teams, not the point differential. Also, Mississippi is just a run-first offense. They average 262 yards per game on the ground, 5.5 yards per carry. Now, you got to look on the defensive side for Texas Tech. They've had their struggles to stop in the run this year. In the last 4 games of the season, they gave up 204 yards per game, 4.9 yards per carry in that span. So this is going to be a Texas Tech team is going to have a difficulty stopping the run versus Ole Miss. Now, Texas Tech wants to pass the ball. They average 308 yards per game, 61.3% pass completion rate. And you have Ole Miss's pass defense, decent, so they can actually make the stops. 218 yards per game passing they give up, and they also get to the quarterback with an 8.3% sack rate. Now, Texas Tech, 3-8 against the spread in the last 11 bowl games. Mississippi, 7-3-1 against the spread versus non-conference opponents, and 6-2-1 ATS in bowl games. So Ole Miss should have the edge here. Texas Tech will be without key lineman, top QB, and their best defensive player for this game. So there's a lot of opt-outs on the Texas Tech side to worry about here. Well, Ole Miss should be able to run the ball well here against a poor rush defense in Texas Tech. That's why I'm going to be going with Texas Tech on this one. I'm sorry, Mississippi on this one. Give me the Rebs. -3, 1.5 unit special. Sam in the chat saying, what's up, buddy? All right. We came here to talk about the plays from the 29th, which is tomorrow, all the way up to the 2nd. So there's going to be a little bit of a long podcast. Hopefully you guys stay with me as much as possible. I try to run through a lot of this as I can. I'm not going to talk about every play. I may have an opinion on a couple of plays here and there, but I'm going to be talking strictly the locks here. And I want to start here with Syracuse going against Minnesota, 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time in New York, in Yankee Stadium. It is the Pinstripe Bowl. You have the ACC going against the Big Ten, starting to get into some of those major conference games here. Now, let's look at Cuse here for a second. Cuse 7-5 for the season, losing 5 out of the last 6 games. They actually depleted dramatically at the end of the season. They finished the last 4 games with a minus 11 point differential and minus 104 net yard average. However, let's look on the Minnesota side here. Minnesota finished 8-4, winning 4 out of the last 5 games, finishing the season with a plus 10 point differential, plus 81 net yard average in the last 4 games. So you have yin and yang here. You have a team that's playing better on the back half of the season versus a team that really depleted at the back half of the season. Cuse will be missing a lot of key players in this game. A lot of opt-outs here, especially the key guy that you didn't want to opt out in running back Sean Tucker. He had 1,058 yards this season, 5.1 yards per carry, 11 touchdowns. Also, you got to look at their best offensive lineman, Bergeron. He's not going to be playing this game as well, opted out for the NFL draft. So you have 2 key opt-outs there for Syracuse going into this game. Now, Cuse has also struggled against stopping the run here too. Back half of the season, they give up 200 yards per carry on the ground, 4 out of the last 6 games this season. In Minnesota, what do they want to do? They want to run the ball. They have Ibrahim can actually put up the yaks on like no other. No key opt-outs that I'm seeing on the Minnesota side. However, there's going to be a question mark here with Tanner Morgan. He's listed as questionable for this game. I know he's dealing with some concussion protocol type of situation with him. I think he had 3 concussions this year. So there's a lot of precautionary measures put with Tanner Morgan. I don't think he played the last game of the season as well. But the line is really sitting very high, leading me to believe that Tanner Morgan probably will be playing in this game. But it doesn't matter for me because I think Minnesota is going to want to run the ball against this Syracuse defense. But look at Minnesota in bowls, 5-1 against the spread in bowls dating back to 2014, where Syracuse is in its first bowl since 2018. Syracuse has not played well since October. They're missing way too much on both sides of the ball. And they're going against a Minnesota team typically who steps up in bowl games no matter what. So the line, I think, is right here. So I'm going to be taking Minnesota minus 10. This is 2-unit special for me. Minnesota, the Gophers, minus 10. 2-unit special. All right, moving on to the next game here. We always say, remember the Alamo. That's right. We're going to be trekking over there. I can't even find the Washington, Texas one. Hold up. All right, we don't have it here. We're just going to talk about it. Washington versus Texas. 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time tomorrow. We're going to the Alamo. Late game for the Alamo Bowl here. Usually we see this game when it comes onto the table. It's usually like an afternoon game. You see the sunset in the background, the desert and everything like that. A really beautiful scenery over there at the Alamo Dome. Let's look at Washington here for a second, though. Washington is 10-2 this season, having a great season, great turnaround season in the coach's first regime of the team. Also, Penix turning his career around, going to Washington as well. They finished with a plus 15 point differential, plus 153 net yard average. Now look at Texas here. Somewhat disappointing season. They finished 8-4. I think there was a lot of high hopes with this team going in, but they had a plus 15 point differential, plus 68 net yard average. Now Texas did well in non-conference play. If we actually saw them in the beginning of the season, there was a lot of high hopes about how good Texas was going to be. Whether Texas was going to be back or not, I think the non-conference schedule really confused that. They had a plus 20 point differential, plus 57 net yard average versus non-conference opponents. And they also had some great competition. They had to play Bama and they had to play UTSA, both bowl teams in that span. Now look at Washington. They did well in conference. They had a plus 27 point differential, plus 270 net yard average, but they face, and I'm talking about non-conference, sorry. But they face like some weird non-conference weak schedule going into that one. Kent State, Portland State, and Michigan State. Teams that didn't make bowls and just weren't up to the level of competition that Washington should be facing. Now you got to look at Texas here. Played their best ball away from home this season. That's apparent. Plus 15 point differential, plus 103 net yard average on the road. While Washington on the road, not as good as they were at home this season. Plus 2 point differential, plus 68 net yards. So you have the advantage there for Texas, ability to play away from home. Now, Washington's weak spot this season has been their pass defense. They've given up 288 yards per game to their opponents, and they've also been gashed for 300-plus yards passing to multiple passing teams, including Michigan State, Stanford, UCLA, Arizona, Oregon, and Washington State. So this is a team that just has a weak pass defense. And now Texas, let's look at what they're going to be dealing with opt-outs. They're going to be out without their top running back, Bijan Robinson, but they have 2 running backs in the depth chart that average 6 yards per game per carry. So with that, I don't think there's going to be much of a drop off without Bijan, but there is going to be somewhat of a drop off losing a star like that. Texas has historically done well in bowls, even though they've had a disappointing season under the public perspective. When they go into bowls, they show up against top ranked opponents. They have a 4-1 against the spread in bowls this season, 4-1 against the spread in bowls dating back to 2014, and Washington is 2-4 against the spread in bowls dating back to 2014. Also, got to look at betting on Pac-12 teams. It's never bodes well, especially the underdogs. 3-10 against the spread dating back to 2018. So I'm fading Pac-12 teams as dogs. I'm taking this Texas team as a favorite. That's 8-4 versus a 10-2 team. There's a reason for that, folks. I'm telling you, Texas is a better team in this spot. So I'm going to be taking Texas -3, 2-unit special. And that is that for the Alamo. So let's talk about condiments. Let's talk about ketchup. Let's talk about mustard. No. We're going to be talking about Duke's Mayo. That's what we're going to be talking about. And the Duke's Mayo Bowl is going to be playing on the 30th. At 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time is Maryland Terrapins versus the NC State Wolfpack for the Mayo. And guess what? The coach that is going to win this game is going to get a Mayo bath. So there's an incentive for the coach to actually come in here and do well. Now look at Maryland here. 7-5 this season, losing 3 out of their last 4 games, -5 point differential, -17 net yard average in that span. So a little bit depleted at the end of the season, but we're not worried because we're going to be taking Maryland here. Now look at NC State. Finished the season losing 2 out of their last 3 games, -1 point differential, -40 net yard average in the 4-game span. So, equality there as far as how both these teams performed at the back half of the year. Now, Maryland, good passing team. They've actually performed very well versus the pass passing the ball as they were a running team for years coming up to this season. 260 yards per game they averaged, 67.2 pass completion rate, and 7.9 yards per attempt. Absolutely great season as far as the offensive production is concerned for the Maryland Terrapins. Now you're going to look at NC State in this spot. They'll be without their offensive coordinator, who's left to take over the head coaching job at Coastal Carolina. So they'll be playing what is considered by committee, quote unquote, calling the offensive plays within their offensive staff. So there's not going to be a guy that's going to actually be leading the charge. And this one is going to be, should we do this? Should we don't? I don't really know what the mix-up is. It feels very exhibition match-ish on the NC State side, which leads me to believe they don't give 2 hoots for this bowl game. So look at Maryland versus non-conference. They've actually done really well versus non-conference. 6-1 against the spread versus non-conference opponents, whereas NC State 2-7 against the spread in their last 9 games overall. A lot of injuries that happened to NC State. I think their hopes were very high going into the season. Maybe considered a sleeper or Cinderella to win the ACC championship, and they really didn't they underperformed dramatically this season. So for them to end the season against a Maryland Terrapins team that is highly motivated would probably be the spot to go and take the Terrapins and watch NC State kind of fold in this spot. So with all that being said, all the statistics applied, I don't mind taking Maryland on the money line. I don't really think there's any value in it now at +1, +1.5, +2, depending on where you get it and what book. But I'm going to be taking the Terrapins here. I got it at +1 as a 2-unit. So take whatever line you can get on Maryland. I just think Maryland is going to be the team that's going to show up here and play good ball. And I want to say, no, that's not correct, because they played in the Pinstripe Bowl last year. They played really well last year in the bowls. So I'm going to go with Maryland again. Good coaching, good team. Want to show out for the end of the season. All right, now we're moving into some fun. Pittsburgh versus UCLA on the 30th, 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, the Sun Bowl. Another fun game to watch. And I think I confused the Alamo with the Sun Bowl. The Sun Bowl is the one that I was thinking of. Like, you see the sunset, they feel like they're in the middle of nowhere in the desert. The Alamo Bowl is a dome. So forgive me for the confusion there. I always think the Alamo Bowl should be named the Sun Bowl. The Sun Bowl should be named the Alamo, whatever. But we have Pittsburgh, the Panthers, going against UCLA in this spot. Now, Pittsburgh is coming into this game winning 4 straight, 8-4 to finish the season. They had a +8 point differential, +83 net yard average, as well as +17 point differential, +132 net yard average in the last 4 games. So this is a team that actually played really well considering their record. Now, look at UCLA. Finished the season losing 2 out of the last 3 games, putting up a +3 point differential, +44 net yard average in the last 4 games. I think there was a lot of high hopes with the UCLA Bruins coming up to the back half of the season. It just fell apart at the end, and I think it's a better spot to take Pittsburgh, to be honest with you. Pittsburgh's rush defense is outstanding this year. That's why. They've only given up 96 yards per game on the ground, 3.2 yards per carry, which is ranked 8th in the country. Now, if you know anything about UCLA, they have the dual threat with DTR and Cabernet, who, whether they're going to play or not in this game is always questionable. A lot of game time decisions, it seems like. I can't really find a lot of paperwork or any sort of official confirmations that DTR, Cabernet, and also Jake Bobo, which is one of their top receivers, if he's going to be playing this game. So that's going to be one of those considerations. You may have to wait till game time before you make this move. But I'm going to take a little bit of a risk here with Pitt. Also, Pitt will be missing a lot of people offensively and defensively. They're going to miss their top running back, but they have depth in that regard. The quarterback situation is really wonky on that one as well. So take this with a grain of salt. This is kind of one of those gamble type of games. That's why I've kind of downgraded it to a unit and a half. But I'm going to be taking the dog here with Pittsburgh. I like Pittsburgh +5.5, 1.5 unit play for me. Just watch up to kickoff, maybe an hour before kickoff, just to make sure that the guys that say they're playing are playing, the guys that aren't playing. So it's kind of a weird situation with that particular bowl game. We got, guys not officially saying they're out. All right. Now we're moving into a nobody's interested game. Barstool's sponsored Arizona Bowl, Ohio versus Wyoming. This is an interesting game, to say the least. And for me to actually be making a play on it is probably degenerate behavior. But I like the Ohio side here. I want to tell you why here. Now, Wyoming, let's start with Wyoming for a second. Wyoming finished the season playing Boise and Fresno State. They had a -6 point differential, -81 net yard average for the season. Now you got Ohio, who was on a 7-game win streak before going into the MAC title, losing that game 17-7, -128 net yard average. Ohio's Bobcats' key to success all season has been their quarterback, Curtis Rourke, who's played in all but 2 games this season, including the championship game. He didn't play. Their backup, CJ Harris, 50% pass completion rate, 1 TD, 1 INT. Unproven quarterback, for that matter. So it's going to be a huge loss for Ohio to take in this spot. But I think you're okay, especially when you hear about the opt outs that Wyoming has to deal with. Wyoming, first of all, all they want to do is they want to run the ball. They want to pound it down your throat. The problem is with that, all their half running back depth for this game either opted out to go to the transfer portal or opted out to go to the NFL draft. It's one or the other. So really, you have a Wyoming team that has no running back depth, a team that loves to run the ball, no running backs. So that's why I think it's a little bit favored for the Ohio Bobcats here. And Ohio will most likely turn to the running game, knowing the quarterback situation, not having Curtis Rourke. They average 4.4 yards per carry with Shinebek I can't say his name, Bandura, 4.8 yards per carry, 12 touchdowns this season with him. So they're able to run the ball with Ohio. They do want to pass, but I don't think they're going to really want to rely on the pass with a inexperienced quarterback. So you have Wyoming won't be the same without their offensive production. They won't have a running game. They can't move the ball, which favors Ohio. And Ohio is 5-0 against the spread in bowl games dating back to 2014. So there's a lot of boxes checked here, leading me into this degenerative pick of a G5 team. But I love the spot. So I'm going to be taking the Ohio Bobcats -1, and that's a 2-unit play for me. And these lines could change, folks. I don't know what these lines are going to be like by the time we hit game time. So just check them as you go along. I may be on the wrong side of some of them, but hell, I'm only just looking at the stats. I'm looking at the numbers, and that's how I'm making my pick. All right. Now we're moving on to some of the juicier games here. A lot of these New Year's 6 type of bowls, and this one is a little bit interesting to me. So we're talking Tennessee, we're talking Clemson here. This is on the 30th, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Interesting spot here for Clemson. Tennessee finished the season, their last 4 games 2-2, plus 14-point differential, plus 99 net yard average. But most of that was versus inferior opponents, including losses to South Carolina and Georgia. So their losses were to, stronger opponents, but the wins that they got, I think it was Missouri and Vanderbilt in that regard. Now you got to look at Clemson. They finished the season winning 3 out of their last 4 games, including the ACC championship versus UNC 39-10. Made a change at quarterback, which has kind of helped their offensive production. I'll talk about that in a second. So DJ Uiagalelei is in the transfer portal. He got benched in the ACC championship, and they put in Cade Klubnik, which is the worst name for any quarterback ever. Cade did well in the ACC championship game, coming in as a in reserve. 20 out of 24 passing, 279 yards, and 1 TD. So he did his job. He did it right, and he did it methodically. Enough for Clemson to just be saying, you know what? You can go, DJ. We don't need you. Now, Tennessee uses the run game as their power for their offense. Everything kind of goes off of that to extenuate the pass. They averaged 5.1 yards per carry this season, 206 yards per game. And you had Clemson's defense, though, on the other side of the ball, absolutely great against the run. They held their opponents to 3.3 yards per carry at 102 yards per game. They are ranked 10th in the country at stopping the run. So this kind of makes Tennessee one-dimensional, and without Hendon Hooker, it's going to make it very difficult for the Tennessee Volunteers to actually do anything offensively. But Tennessee played one better rush defense. If you want to go into how have they done it versus good rush defenses? So they played Georgia. Georgia held them to 2.2 yards per carry and 95 yards per game, losing the game 27-13. Now I know it's Georgia, and Georgia's on a different level than most teams, but I'm saying Clemson defensively against the run is pretty damn close to what Georgia can bring to the table. Also, you got to look at some of these opt-outs here. Hold on. So Tennessee had a potent offense all season. Um, but they'll be without their quarterback and Hooker, which I just told you he had an injury, ACL, out for the season. They'll also be without their two top wide receivers in Jalen Hyatt and Cedric Tillman. Cedric Tillman really didn't play much this year because he was dealing with injuries, but he used to be the number one guy for Tennessee. Was supposed to play in this game, so was supposed to be healthy. Decided not to play in this game. And then, of course, Jalen Hyatt was playing Blitnikoff level type of offense all season and was their deep threat going down the field and catching everything. So Clemson has some edge rushers that opted out on their side of the ball. But the core up front is stayed intact. They still got Brian Breezy. They still have the major stars that are absolutely swallow up that run. They're just going to be missing some edge rushers, which I think Dabo Swinney, with his recruiting mentality, probably has guys that can fill into those roles. They're just inexperienced. Clemson offense, though, should be strong in this one with Clay Klubnik. Will Shipley is going to be playing this game, so that is key for them. He's a big, huge offensive production for them. So I think they're going to be fine offensively and actually show some production, which they haven't showed all season in this game. Also, Clemson in bowl games, really good. 9-3 against the spread, dating back to 2014, where Tennessee is 0-4 against the spread in neutral site games. Tennessee just had a huge drop-off once their whole entire offense fell apart, which meaning Hendon Hooker. And finding a replacement for him. I know they have Milton, who has ball game experience. He is a veteran, played against some high potent offenses. I just think that Clemson, when it comes down to bowl games, it doesn't matter if they're playing the Liberty Bowl, doesn't matter if they're playing the CarQuest Air Tire Loop Check Bowl. Like, Clemson wants to win every single bowl game they go into, and they showed it last year. You thought they were just going to be a college football playoff team with no motivation going into an average bowl. They showed up and they won that game. So I think Clemson's going to show up in this one. I don't think Heupel and that offense is going to be able to be equipped to beat this Clemson team with Dabo, who's very experienced in bowls. So I'm going to be rolling with Clemson here. Clemson minus 5.5, and it's a 2.5 unit play for me. So I like this one a lot. Clemson minus 5.5, 2.5 unit play for me. All right, now we're getting to the meat and potatoes of this. Oh boy, do I love this one right here. This is a game to talk about, folks. Bama versus Kansas State. And they're playing in the Sugar Bowl. 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on New Year's Eve. Let's talk about Kansas State for a second here. Coming off 4 straight wins, plus 17 point differential, plus 60 net yard average in that span, including winning the Big 12 championship over TCU in dramatic fashion in OT, 31-28. They face the 7th toughest schedule in the country. Now let's look at Bama. Bama's won 3 out of the last 4 games, beating Ole Miss, Austin Peay, let's go P, and Auburn. Plus 14 point differential, plus 114 net yards in that span. 33rd toughest schedule in the country. So in that small span, they really didn't play any good competition in that one. So the numbers are a little bit skewed. So take that with a grain of salt here. Now, let's look at Bama, how they do versus non-conference opponents. Bama versus non-conference opponents, plus 16 point differential, plus 110 net yard average. Kansas State, on the other hand, versus non-conference opponents, plus 12 point differential, plus 47 net yard average. However, Kansas State, I told you, played a tougher schedule than Bama. Bama on the road, whole different story here. Not a team you want to back when they're playing away from Tuscaloosa. Plus 5 point differential, plus 39 net yard average. Kansas State on the other side, plus 8 point differential, plus 11 net yard average. What does Kansas State want to do? They want to run the ball. They've done it all season long. They average 210 yards per game on the ground, 5.1 yards per carry average. However, where they got Will Howard in there, gives them a little bit more of a passing dynamic as of late when Martinez went down with his injury. Now, Bama, strong overall versus the run, 3.5 yards per carry. However, versus good run teams, they've been gashed. 4.7 yards per carry given up to Tennessee, 5.4 6.4 yards per carry given up to LSU and 7.4 yards per carry given up to Auburn. So this is a team that can get gashed on the run. They've played a lot of weaker opponents, so the average is a little bit skewed there. So just take that with a grain of salt. Looking at this Kansas State team here, Kansas State is also 5-1 against the spread in neutral site games. Bama 2-5 against the spread in their last 7 games. 0-4 against the spread versus the Big 12. This is a kryptonite for Alabama here, and they're playing in the Sugar Bowl. If you ever seen them play in the Sugar Bowl, it's usually a recipe for disaster for any Bama team. They've just never played well in the stadium. They've gotten beaten and upset by Oklahoma. They've gotten upset by more than one team in the stadium. This is kind of a spot that Nick Saban just cannot perform well. And then you have a Kansas State team that is just having a dream season. They're not happy to be there. They're in there to roll up their sleeves and play. I don't care if Bryce Young is playing. I don't care if Will Anderson Jr. is going to be playing this one. I don't care if, I don't know, Joe Namath comes back and plays for Alabama. I don't really care if Tua Tagovailoa comes back from concussion protocol in Miami and decides to suit up for the Crimson Tide in this one. Jalen Hurts, bring them all on. I think Kansas State's going to win this game outright. And it's plus 6.5 now. I was stupid and bought the line early thinking it was a good line at plus 3.5. But hell, you guys are getting a plus 6.5 on this show right now, so just take it. It's a 3-unit play for me, and might as well sprinkle a little bit on the money line while you're at it. But for an official play, we're just sticking to the official. Give me Kansas State plus 6.5, 3-unit special. Bang! Woo! We are cooking with some absolute gas. If there's any games that you guys I'm not talking about right now that I'm missing, please put them in the chat right now. Let's talk about them. I'm going to hit the chat right now. Bryce Young is playing now. I don't care if Bryce Young's playing. You just hurt my rant about that. Yep, you like Clemson as well. Who doesn't like Clemson? This one is a great spot for them. Did we talk about ND and South Carolina game already? All right. Hold on. Let me put my buy hat on for Kansas State that I forgot to do because it is a 3-unit play. Let's talk about this game here for a second. All right, South Carolina and Notre Dame. Let's put up the Chiron. So with this game, it's tough for me. It's tough for me to pick. South Carolina finished the season in dramatic fashion. I mean, they beat Tennessee when Tennessee was still in contention for the college football playoff. I thought the back half of the season, then they beat Clemson as well on the road in a rivalry game. So it made me believe that maybe Spencer Rattler got the kinks out of his system. He feels a little bit more comfortable, has that swagger back that he had in Oklahoma before he got benched by Williams. I want to take Notre Dame with every ounce of my body. I'm a fan. I'm a Notre Dame fan. You can see the background. I got a bunch of Notre Dame shit in the background. The quarterback Tyler Buchner hasn't played since the Marshall game when he got hurt, and then he got replaced by Drew Pine. Drew Pine went to the transfer portal. He's playing at Arizona State next year. So Drew, I mean, really, if there's any motivation in this one, Buchner has motivation to keep his job and actually compete for a starting position next year because, quite frankly, the rumors are saying that Sam Hartman is going to be the quarterback for Notre Dame. So that's going to be tough on him. So I don't know where his head's going to be at for this one, especially with not playing all season long. They'll also be out without their top tight end in Mike Mayer. Mike Mayer was the absolute crutch for Drew Pine all season long. It was the only receiver that he would ever throw to. So that's going to be a tough loss for them as well. The running game is going to be strong. The offensive line is going to be strong. The defense should be okay. They're going to be missing one of their top pass rushers on the defensive side, who's going to be opted for the NFL draft. So the motivation factor is a little bit skewed for me to take Notre Dame. I think the motivational factor probably leans towards the South Carolina side. So that would probably be the direction that I would lean to is South Carolina on this one. I'm not going to be taking Notre Dame, especially missing their top receiver and just so many holes as far as the quarterback position is concerned and everything else as far as the motivational factor is. This is a team that's in a transitional year, and we'll have to review them going back to next season. So that's what I got on Notre Dame. Going back to the chat here for a little bit. stopping by, and he didn't get fined. That's right, not mean. God damn. All right, let's move on to some of these other games here. Moving on to let's talk some college football playoff, shall we? No, we were. Yeah, let's talk some college football playoff here. Uh, let's talk about TCU going to the Fiesta Bowl here in Arizona. They're playing the Michigan State Wolverines, a team that was in the college football playoff last year and got absolutely embarrassed by Georgia. And TCU having one of those dramatic seasons that nobody that caps sports can figure out. But TCU, I like them in this spot here. I think it's too many points for Michigan. Let's talk about TCU here. They're 12-1 this season, losing the Big 12 championship 31-28, plus 65 net yard average for the game. They finished the season overall really well, plus 15 point differential, plus 88 net yard average. Michigan, 13-0 this season, winning the Big 10 championship 43-22 versus Purdue, despite having a minus 70 net yard average for the game. They finished the season with plus 27 point differential, plus 176 net yard average. A lot of that pretty much is predicated on the fact that they really didn't play a strong schedule at all until the back half of the season. Now, Michigan did lose their top running back, Blake Corum. He's out for the year with a knee injury, but they have a good running back to back him up. Donovan Edwards has actually been very solid for them. 7.5 yards per carry, 7 touchdowns this season. So the key here with Michigan, they like to run the ball, 5.6 yards per carry, 243 yards per game. I don't think there's going to be much of a drop off there. Want to see if Donovan Edwards only playing really like solid carries in 1 or 2 games. I want to see if that carries over into this spot. I really don't think it does with TCU, though. TCU played a weak schedule all season long. I just mentioned that. Last 3 games of the season, they did have some stronger competition. But you actually look at their defense on average in those 3 games, gave up 425 yards per game, 298 yards passing. They also only had a plus 6 net yard average in that span. So with good competition, water comes to its level here with Michigan. And lo and behold, what do you see? Michigan, I mean, from a point differential standpoint, doing well because they're getting the turnovers. However, yardage-wise, they're staying even to the competition. Now, TCU, on the other hand, can beat you multiple ways. They run the ball well, 200 yards per game, 5.2 yards per carry. Passing the ball, 9 yards per attempt, 65.7 yards pass completion rate, and 273 yards per game. So this team is very dynamic on both sides of the ball, whether it be running the ball, whether it be passing the ball, and they also have a very aggressive defense as well. This will challenge this Michigan defense a lot, as they've only faced real good competition, like I said, in Ohio State, Purdue, and Maryland. In those situations, look at the stats that these teams put up against them in the passing game. 269 yards per game versus Maryland. Ohio State put up 349 yards passing versus them, and Purdue put up 366 yards passing versus Michigan's defense. So to me, TCU, this might be the best defense that Michigan has seen all year. Michigan has struggled in bowls historically. If you actually look at their record since 2014, 1-5 against the spread in bowl games. So this is a perfect spot to be taking TCU. I think that just this amount of points is just egregious to me. And for the first time ever, I'm saying I'm not selling TCU. I'm buying TCU, which is a welcome change because, God, did the Horned Frogs take a lot of money from you this season. So the key to this one, as long as TCU is able to stop the run and put the ball in the hands of JJ McCarthy to go pass the ball up the field, I think this TCU team could be a little bit more aggressive, get the pass rush to him, and make JJ McCarthy make mistakes. That's where I see this game going here for TCU. I think Sonny Dykes is a terrific coach. I'm not going to take anything away from John Harbaugh at all, or Jim Harbaugh for that matter. I think this is going to be a perfect spot to take the Horned Frogs here, and I got them at +7 and a hook. So I'm going to be taking TCU +7.5, 3-unit special. Give me TCU all day long. God, late. We're just killing these games back and forth. I feel really good. If you haven't been following all my plays, we've been absolutely cooking with gas. I think the Shark picked 3 official plays, swept those. I've only missed 1 play on part 2. So please make sure you like, subscribe, do whatever you can to be part of this channel. Share all the content that we bring here, because this is going to be a channel that's going to continue on all season long. We're talking college basketball, college football, NFL, MLB, hockey. Everything is going to be on this channel. So please make sure you hit the like, hit the subscribe, and hit the bell so you see all the notifications we are bringing to this channel. All right, let's bring in the second layer of the college football playoff here, and this is the 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time game on New Year's Eve. Ohio State is going against the dreaded Georgia Bulldogs, who have absolutely had a boring but dominant season all year long. Let's talk about Ohio State here for a second. Finished the year 11-1, losing their last game of the season versus Michigan in their rivalry game, second straight year in a row. 45-23, minus 38 net yard average for the game, but a -2 turnover ratio, which decided the game. But for the season, absolutely dominant, though. Plus 26 point differential, plus 189 net yard average, 31st toughest schedule on the board. UGA 12-0 this season, winning the SEC championship 50-30, despite having a -20 point net yard average in the game versus LSU. They finished the year plus 26 point differential, plus 20 net yard average, 34th toughest schedule. So I'm giving you a lot of stats here that look very similar to one another. So when diving into these stats, I'm not going to give everything out. I'm not going to bore you right now. Very similar in a lot of ways. Ohio State has a good pass rush, 9.8% sack rate. However, Georgia has great pass protection, 2.1% sack rate given up to their opponents. Both can run the ball. Both can pass the ball. Both give up the same amount of yards on average to their opponents. You have UGA giving up 292 yards per game, where Ohio State's giving up 304 yards per game. They put up the same yards on the offensive side as well. 493 yards put up for Ohio State, 492 yards for UGA. So I think what happened with this line here, in my mind, is the public perception is Georgia's the champ. Georgia's good. Georgia's dominant. They've shown that all season long. Georgia is just the better team. And because Ohio State lost in their rivalry game versus Michigan and looked terrible at that, that's who the team we should be picking is Georgia. I'm not taking that route necessarily. I think there is line value taking the Buckeyes here. Now, you look at the trends are skewed for Ohio State. Ohio State's trends are bad. However, most of that is because they are the public favorite. So the line is always going to be favoring them, and there's always value to take the dog. So this is the first time in a while that we're able to see Ohio State as a dog in a college football playoff game. So I think Ohio State's going to be a little bit fired up, a little bit of a chip on the shoulder. They've already had that one loss, which is very key going into these games. Same thing with TCU. TCU knows what a loss feels like. These other teams don't. So there's a lot of fire going into this game for these two teams, and sitting there both as dogs, I think there is value with both these teams. And on that note, I'm getting a possession here with the Ohio State Buckeyes. So I'm going to be taking +7 for Ohio State. And it's a 1-unit play for me, only because I know how good Georgia is. I know what Georgia does when the spotlight is on them. We saw it in week 1 against Oregon. We saw it last year in the college football playoff. Every time they're in a big game, Kirby Smart has that team ready to go. And I'm not going to leap a bunch of units into this game when I don't have full confidence in the Buckeyes. I only feel that the Buckeyes have line value here. So I'm going to be betting 1 unit on it. Give me Ohio State +7 as the 1-unit play. All right. Now we're getting into New Year's Day-ish, post New Year's Day. let's talk about some of these games here. I'm going to mention this one right here only because it is the Mike Leach Bowl. So Mike Leach is going to be playing in this game the Relia Quest Bowl, and is played uh, at Joe Robbie Stadium. I think that's the name of it, where the Tampa Bay Bucks play. And guess what? There's a bunch of pirate ships around there, and guess who is the ultimate pirate? Mike Leach. So a lot of the narrative leads you to believe to go take Mississippi State in this one. Will Rogers is going to be playing in this game. There are some key opt-outs there for Mississippi State. However, when you look at the Illinois side of the ball, the biggest player on the board for them, Chase Brown, ain't going to be playing in this game. He's their sole source of offense. He put up so many egregious yards all season. I think he hit every single over rush prop that was imaginable this season. So if he's not going to be playing the game, I'm not going to be ever betting on Illinois whatsoever in this one. And quite frankly, Mississippi State, Mike Leach teams in bowls never really perform well. But I think on this spot, in this motivational situation, to get Mike Leach that one win with a bunch of pirate ships in the background, the narrative, the book, the Cinderella story is already built there. So if I have a lean on this one, it'd be Mississippi State. Not playing this officially, but it's just one of those situations where I think the Bulldogs here will want to take Mike Leach out properly and salute him with a pirate type of win. This game I love here, folks. The Cotton Bowl. Tulane. What? Tulane's in the Cotton Bowl versus USC. Let's look at USC here for a second. USC had a great season altogether. 11-2 overall straight up. Lost the Pac-12 championship, as you know, 47-24 to Utah, minus 114 net yards for the game. A lot of injuries predicated in that one. Caleb Williams getting hurt with a hamstring really took away his mobility, killed the offense altogether, and USC doesn't have a good defense. But they had plus 13-point differential all season, plus 85 net yard average. Tulane, great season, phenomenal season. Non-conference, conference, everything they've done, they are consistent and they are productive. I like this team a lot. They won the AAC championship. This is a team that won 2 games last year, but they played a lot of close games. They turned their season around. Willie Fritz did a tremendous job with the Green Wave here. Plus 15-point differential, plus 92 net yard average for the season. Now, USC's weak point all season long is, guess what? Their run defense. They cannot stop the run if they try. They give up 4.7 yards per game to their opponents, 5.3 yards per game on the yards per carry on the road. And Tulane, what do? They can beat you on the run. They can beat you in the pass. They are very dynamic on both sides of the ball. But just looking at their run game, 197 yards per game on the ground, 4.9 yards per carry. Their starting running back, Tajon Spears, 1,376 yards rushing on the ground this season, 6.5 yards per carry. The dude is a dog, and he's going to have himself a field day versus these Trojans. USC also will be without a lot of key players in this one. Jordan Addison, their top wide receiver, opted out for the draft. Travis Dye, their top running back, he's been out for a couple weeks. He's out with the season-ending injury. Also, they'll be without their two top offensive linemen. And also, Caleb Williams is a big question mark. All I've seen is he's going to play. I don't know if that's going to be the case right now. It may be a game-time decision. Line is really short, which tells me that he's probably not going to be into this game. He did come into the out of that game against Utah with a hamstring injury, which has me some concerns on this one. So maybe I'm gambling a little bit on Caleb Williams not playing that game. But even if he does or he doesn't, he's missing some key guys on the offensive line. So Tulane can really get to you on the defensive side of the ball. Also, you got to look at Southern Cal in bowl games. Never a team to back whatsoever. They are 0-5 against the spread dating back to 2014, where Tulane is one of the hottest teams in college football to bet on. 15-3 against the spread in their last 18 games. Tulane is simply having a phenomenal year. Willie Fritz has done a tremendous job. They're strong on both sides of the ball. They can beat you on the offensive side and make stops on the defensive side. And they're going to be ready to play, highly motivated. No key opt-outs for this team, so everybody wants to go dump in and finish this season strong. I'm excited for the Green Wave. You know what we always say in this show? To quote the Shark, 9 words of lifestyle, ride the Green Wave, but we ain't getting out of the water here, folks. We're staying in here. We're riding that wave all the way through the Cotton Bowl here. So give me Tulane plus 2.5, 2-unit, and we're going to have a little bit of a 2-unit special on the money line as well, plus 110. 4 units, baby. I love this play. It's the bowl game of the year here, folks. Bowl game of the year. We're riding the Green Wave all the way to the Cotton Bowl. Woo! I love it. Outstanding stuff here, folks. 40 ounces of beer, really killing the chat here. Let's go. Holy shit. Jayhawks come back and tied the game. Woo! That's all I can say. I ain't watching the game right now. I'm doing a show. So thanks for ruining that for me. I don't mind. I love it. Love it, love it, love it. All right. Going down. This is the last game on the board here, folks. Last game on the board here. And quite frankly, I don't know where I put the Penn. Oh, there we go. Here we go. Penn State, Utah. The granddaddy of them all. You're looking live from Pasadena, California. The best sunset, I would say, bowl season. 1A, 1B, Sun Bowl. So those are the ones I like. You have Utah going against Penn State. Now, Penn State is just really under the radar. Like, everyone just assumes this team is bland. They're bad. I think Penn State will step up in this game, as they do normally in these bowl situations. They're coming off a 10-2 season. Who thought they were 10-2? They went under the radar 10-2. Their only 2 losses this season were to 2 college football playoff teams, Ohio State and Michigan. They beat everybody else and dominated. They finished the year with a plus 18-point differential, plus 115 net yard average, and they faced the 22nd toughest schedule in the country. Now you have Utah. Great season as well. But the problem is in the back half of the season that when games counted and everything was on the line, other than the Pac-12 championship, they lost the key games. Okay. But they finished with a plus 20 point differential, plus 147 net yard average, 52nd toughest schedule in the country. Now, both teams match up statistically, both on the offensive and defensive side. There's really no key holes or performances here. However, when you actually look at how these two teams perform on the road, little bit of a difference here, and I'm just talking strictly on the point differentials aspect here. Penn State on the road, plus 17 point differential, plus 61 net yard average. Utah on the road, plus 10 point differential, plus 177 net yard average. However, their 3 key losses this season were versus favorable opponents away from Utah. They lost to Florida. They lost to UCLA. They lost to Oregon. All key games. There are other road games in this situation that are really packing the stats a little bit. They beat Arizona State by 21, and that was the post losing the when the head coach got fired after the Eastern Michigan game, if you remember. Washington State they only beat by 4, and of course they played Colorado, which is arguably the worst team in college football, by 42. So just a bad team. So a lot of the state's stats are getting inflated there. But when you actually look at key teams that can actually match up with them, they failed not only to cover, but to win the game. Now you got to look at Utah here. Some key opt-out spots for them. They're going to be losing Tavion Thomas, their leading rusher, which is fine, I guess, because Utah really has some depth on the running back side. But they lose their tight end. The biggest one here, they lose their tight end and top receiver in Dalton Kincaid. So that is a huge loss because that is a big crutch for I was trying to think of the quarterback's name for the quarterback here for Utah. And they also lose their top coverage corner here in Clark Phillip III, who's opting out for the NFL draft. So that is they have no depth in the coverage after him. So if you have a key receiver, they should keen in on him for Penn State. And I think the passing game is going to really improve for them and open things up in the Rose Bowl. Now you got Penn State. They'll be out without their top wide receiver as well in Washington, but they have depth. They have a lot of guys. They spread that ball really well. So I'm not worried about the wide receivers. They do lose their shutdown corner in Joey Porter Jr. I don't think he played in the last game either. So it's not really a surprise that he's not going to be playing in this game. Everybody knew that he was going to opt out, and I think the plans were that they would have enough depth in there to handle the coverage for Penn State in this spot. So biggest key here, I don't make it a habit to bet on Pac-12 teams in bowl games. They are 19-35 against the spread, dating back to 2014. And I'm not counting this year. I'm just only counting between 2014 and 2021. So that's like 35% coverage covers for the Pac-12 teams in these bowls. And I'm not going to be judging a Penn State team that their only losses were to Michigan and Ohio State because they are in the college football playoff. So my hat is engaged for the first time this season. I'm going to be riding the Nittany Lions plus 2.5, 3-unit play, 1-unit play on the money line plus 113. And that's the Rose Bowl, baby. That's going to be finishing off the bowl season until we get to the college football playoff championship. We may revisit this again. We plan on doing an NFL Circa Million show on Saturday with the Shark, with the Odds Fellow, to break down all NFL games. So make sure you join us for that. The time will be determined. So just let it be known that we're going to be doing this on a Saturday, not a Sunday like we normally do due to the holiday. So keep that in mind as you're that's why you hit the notification button. That's why you subscribe to the channel, right? So you don't miss any coverage, any sharp angles, any sharp picks that come from us. So thanks for joining us all. Thanks for showing up to the chat, everybody. I know this is a weird time, but I wanted to make sure I wanted to get the show out. Tomorrow I will clip. I will share everything that I'm going to be given as the day goes on tomorrow and through the January 2nd slate. So good luck with your bets, everybody. Let's cash some tickets. And hopefully, I'm not looking at the score right now. Hopefully Kansas is up right now. I haven't looked right now. I'm not going to do a live look until I get off the air. Maybe I will do it right now. All right, so they're driving. Second overtime. Wow. We love it. Picks are going good. We're going to keep cashing. Thanks for joining me once again. Make sure you check us out on Saturday for the NFL show. And as always, let's keep dancing. Yeah!